What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm going to finally be ranking every Ghostface killer. We got 4 new additions to the list, right? So now we got up to 13, and it's 13 because Jason does count in Scream 6. Now, here's the deal. My list tends to be different from other people's, but how I try to approach this is I try to also give credit for the kills and for the phone calls, right? Technically, in the universe, the people behind the mask, although Ghostface kind of has become its own unique character, right? There's Ghostface, and then there's the killers. I try to attribute, okay, who did which call, who killed who, and if they're cool, or if they add to something, then those characters tend to get some bumps with me that maybe they otherwise wouldn't. So with all that being said, let's go through the list, starting at number 13, which I'm gonna do Ethan. Now, the thing with Ethan is because I just really don't like his character, okay? I don't think Jack Champion did all that great acting as him. I never really doubted for a second that Ethan was Ghostface. So, granted, I always looked at his character with a bit of a slant, right? Whenever he's like, well, I'm part of the friend group. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I was at Econ. It couldn't possibly have been me. I'm like, dude, you're the killer, all right? Please just stop. Now, I will say, if that is him, which I do believe it is him, in the apartment, the one that kills Annika and with the ladder and all that jazz, incredible. That's one of the greatest sequences in all of Scream history. So, does he get bonus credit for that? Yeah, I guess you can give him credit for that. His kill is pretty cool, right? Tara stabbing the knife through him. Actually, the final kill of his character being Kirby, pushing the TV on him. Those are all excellent moments. Those are great moments. But beyond that, I truly do believe Ethan is one of the worst, if not the worst characters in Scream 6. And in terms of Ghostface, I gotta put him at the absolute bottom. Coming in at number 12, I'm going to put Jason. So Jason, back and forth, he deserves to be low considering he's kind of a wannabe Ghostface killer, but I actually kind of love that, right? So strengths is the catfish thing. I actually really like that. I like the phone call. I like that they made the choice, right? Because the behind the scenes story is they actually had planned that Roger would just do the entire voice with Laura on the phone, right? Samara Weaving. It would just be Roger's voice. Then they changed it to be, okay, well, let's have it be Tony Revolori, and then we'll change it to Roger. And I loved it. So now again, you got to give Jason credit for that, right? Because he is the character that's doing it. So I thought that opening was very, very clever. And then his phone call, very long and just very different, right? We finally got what so many people have theorized / asked for years, a killer that kills in the beginning of the movie, and then they die from another Ghostface. That is literally what we got. Now, we didn't get him in the Ghostface mask, and then he's murdered by another Ghostface, but we got pretty close. So I think his situation is just very unique, and although, he didn't do much, and honestly, if he tried to take out Sam, I think Sam would wipe the floor with him. Okay, Sam's not going to take any of that. That wouldn't have gone well, but at the end of the day, he never got to that point, so we'll never know. Okay, number 11, I'm going to go with Charlie. Now, I want to say Charlie was higher on the list back in the day when I did this versus now. I can't know that for sure, but yet again, new Ghostface killers actually have kind of one-upped him, so he has to be, I suppose, lower on this list. Charlie is somebody that when I watch Scream 4, I do not mind. Controversially, is I know he's such a hated character. I guess he just didn't bring it, right? For a lot of people, you can let me know in the comments why people don't like Charlie. When I'm watching Scream 4, I really don't mind him. Thinking about him post-watching the movie, like days or weeks or months or years removed from Scream 4, then I have a much less opinion of him. Now, actually, I watched Scream 4 for Halloween, so it hasn't been too long. He just doesn't stand out. When I think of these other characters, and I really went for it this time, really was looking at, okay, who's better than who? Charlie just doesn't stand out. To be honest with you, the things that Charlie does best is if you want to give those bonus points that I give. So when he kills Olivia, I mean, technically, now, how does he kill Olivia? I'm not quite sure how his body, his build actually does that, but he does. And that is an incredible kill. That phone call, I love the phone call, calling from the closet. I never said it was your closet. Absolutely love it. I'm not 100% sure. He has to probably be the one who talks to Sydney on the phone too, right? When Sydney walks into the room, because Jill is too close, and I just don't think that situation would work. So that also has to be him. So, again, And as you go through the movie, it only being Jill or Charlie, I do think they kind of get bonus points through the creative kills or the really different phone calls, especially now. Roger like took it to like a 12 out of 10 in that movie. Those are those characters. So I think Charlie gets, pushed up from that. But when he's just Charlie, I don't mind him, but he doesn't stand out. He's very like antisocial. He's very quiet. He's kind of like in his own little corner, and that's fine. But as like a killer, I think you got to have a little bit more spunk, and he just didn't. Coming in at number 10, I got to go with Detective Bailey. So, this one was tough. Like I was debating how low, how high should he go. Ultimately, he comes in pretty low, and it's probably because, well, number one, very obvious, right? As this movie really starts and then keeps going, it is brutally. I really had my eyes kind of on Ethan. I had really sensed Ethan before the film even came out. But Bailey, as the movie starts, it's like, okay, it's you. As soon as you introduce like the family dynamic with him and Quinn, it's like, okay, a cop has to be involved. Otherwise, half this, half the stuff couldn't happen if the cop wasn't involved. So that did hurt his character. Look, he's a bit wacky, and I've gone back and forth with this. We've talked about this in some of my past live streams for Scream. I buy it. I will give him, because you think about some of the other monologues that these characters have delivered, they're all a little bit different in a wacky sense. Dermot Mulroney is a different kind of actor, okay? I definitely think this movie put him in a different element than what he is used to, but I did like him overwhelmingly as an officer, and then even the monologue, I kind of bought in to his kind of just weird way of like emoting and presenting the info, right? Doing the actual speech. He definitely is a bit different, but I kind of bought in. With that being said, I can't really put him higher than that, right? He's fine, and I think we're going to see that even with maybe the next killer. They're fine, but they don't do anything to kind of reinvent or kind of push things forward. Now, his death is incredible, right? And if he is the bodega one, which I do believe he is, that is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool scene. His phone calls, if you want to kind of attribute some of the calls to him, are pretty okay. Nothing massive. The biggest thing he does, at least as Ghostface to me, is the monologue at the end. And then his death. I would say him going back and forth with Sam, actually, on the phone, which I would buy if you want to say, Alex, there's 14 killers and Sam is one of them. I wouldn't disagree. I'm not going to do that, though, because we would enter a whole muddy situation in that sense, in that case. But Detective Bailey, that phone call with her was actually very good, and he did a lot of that as well. Okay, so number 9 is going to be his daughter. Is going to be Quinn. Now, don't get this the wrong way. Liana Liberato, I thought she did really good. And this is where we're starting to see some personality, okay? Quinn, I would not say is, stiff or like lacking. You think of like a Charlie, then you think of Quinn. It's like, no, Quinn has a lot of spunk. In fact, I've made a video specifically on Quinn, the character. I like her. I like her when she's the normal, the sex-positive student that makes some jokes and really, she feels like she's part of the family. I know Liana described her character as like loyal. I get that sense. I think Annika kind of fit in with the dynamic more. Maybe it's because she was dating Mindy, and one of the first things you see Annika do is kind of protect Tara in a way, right? By getting Chad and saying, hey, kind of, we need you. Quinn doesn't do that stuff, so she feels a little bit like outside of the core group, which is okay. So I guess that's the kind of pro and con. I like her energy. I like her spunk when she's just the normal Quinn. She didn't go all the way, though, and I think that was a writing decision to not make her a true part of, like, that family. Maybe because it would be too obvious if she was, to snap. And then when she's Ghostface, I thought she did really good. I think she is, without a doubt, the best of those three. So when they're doing their monologue, Dermot Mulroney as Bailey, Detective Bailey, he does the heavy lifting. Quinn really is the number 2, right? Then you have to start to say, well, Quinn is the one who does Gale. So you have to attribute that phone call to her, the attack to her. She's the subway, which she uses very clever lighting tricks, and she waits for lights to go out and stuff. I mean, she's a clever person. And then, she also was the one who kind of framed Sam. She's the one who started the online rumors. So her character, her importance, she actually is pretty important. So I do think that gives her the edge. Her death was pretty, not existent. Like, it was just a really quick shot. The brick, hitting her face, that was pretty epic as well. She was good. She's also a bit repetitive of Amber, and I would say that kind of hurt her. She's wacky, right? She's a little bit nuts, and it just reminded me of Amber. And it's not necessarily Quinn or Liana's fault. It's just Amber came first, and it feels like you're kind of in the same mold, but you're not. So I'm going to hold that against you. So those are some of the reasons I put Quinn here. So speaking of Amber, number 8, I'm going to say is Amber. This one's a tough one because I think at her best, Amber is elite. I've seen some Ghostface rankings where Amber's in like the top 5. Some have even put her like in the top 3. I think she's got like a loyal fan base. Like I think Twitter really likes her, right, as well. But the thing is, at her best, she is elite. I'd say at her best, she is a top 5 Ghostface. The issue is she's not at her best the whole movie, okay? So when she flips the switch at the end of the film, okay, and really from shooting Liv on, she is incredible. She kind of steals it, okay? I would say she takes it from Richie, who I do think is a better overall, Ghostface killer, whatever we want to say for this video. But Amber is really good in that last 20 or so minutes. The issue is she is in the rest of the movie, and she's not great, right? Basically, she's not existent. So her character plays, literally, I guess, her as a person, Amber, she really, I guess, disguises the fact that she's insane by being the most like monotone, like non-emotive, non-emotion person. So you think Charlie doesn't like do enough? Amber, I think, is the exact same way. Amber is barely in the film. So yeah, you don't really, I guess, suspect her all that much, but it's because she's not in the movie. And then when she is, her energy level is like a 0.5 out of 10. Like it's not even a 1 out of 10. It's just so low. I can't get behind it. I can't get behind that character. Now, you have to, again, attribute some of the phone calls and some of the deaths. So she will always be the one to kill Dewey. I'm sorry, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, that Dewey died or how they did it was perfect, but the character of Amber always will be linked. She did it. So what do you want to give her, right, for that? She took out a legacy, one of the main characters. She did that. And then ultimately, at the end, she is phenomenal. She's really, really fun. You buy it. Again, she's so good that when Quinn does something similar in the next film, you're like, oh, but you're kind of copying Amber, and Amber's was really good. That's how good it was, is you think other people are kind of like leaning into it too much. So she's not bad by any stretch, but as we go through, I guess we'll have to kind of examine this. But in terms of her hiding her insanity versus when she flips and she's just nuts, she's got to be one of the most polar opposite kind of killers that we've ever had. And the issue is it doesn't work. To me, right? The non-exciting version is super not exciting, and it's not enough to raise her any higher in this list. Number 7, we're going with Mickey. Now, I'm almost positive he's higher now than he was before. People got really, really mad at me last time I did a Ghostface ranking because I think I maybe put Mickey at the absolute bottom. Now, I don't know. Well, I have to go back and watch my specific reasoning. I feel like I did pretty okay with my reasons. Mickey gains ground, I guess, when I'm looking at it now. Removed. So I haven't seen Scream 2 since October. I'd like to give him a little bit more. People made some good points. One of the things that Mickey does, almost inadvertently, so I don't know how much you actually want to give him, is kind of a mental game with Sidney. Like the entire movie, to a degree, well, number one, he's insane, and his reason for doing it is so different than anybody else that you gotta almost give him a little bit of extra credit. It's very creative, it's very clever, and it's very different than anything we saw before it and really after it. Nobody has really replicated like the reasoning, and probably rightfully so because it's such an odd reason, but nobody's done it again since Mickey. So you got that kind of uniqueness, but also he seeps into Sidney's psyche about Derek and, can you trust him? Can you not? And then when it comes down to it, he basically convinces her that he is the killer, right? Now, I've always not loved it because it's like, even if Sidney were to try to get Derek out of that situation, what are you gonna do, right? So like he's playing with her, he's messing with her and saying, well, he is my partner. I guess the thought is that Mickey will like cut him down and he'll join Mickey. And ultimately, Derek was supposed to be the killer. So it gets pretty messy. So I like it to a degree because it's like, it's psychological. He's messing with her. He knows her history and she does get affected by this because she actually falls for it, which I think is very, very cool. But at the same time, like, where was that scene actually going? I think I kind of have a problem with that. And then in terms of the kills and the phone calls, there's nothing like massively that jumps out at me that I want to like add to him. In fact, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best phone call in Scream 2 is actually to Randy, and it's not Mickey calling, right? It's Mrs. Loomis or Debbie Salt, whatever you want to call her for this. It's her. So in my opinion, the best call that really would kind of elevate it is not even from him. And that kind of hurts a little bit. So again, I wouldn't say we're in like elite territory yet, but we're getting there. And I do think he has moved higher than what he was a year or so ago. Number 6, I'm going with Richie. I actually think he's a really, really good character. And I'm not sure how I feel about this franchise, or like the new trilogy, let's say, kind of building everything off of him. So he, I guess to a degree, is the Billy Loomis, right? Because he's Billy and then his family comes after, you know, so it's got those parallels. So even like a Roman thing, if they did that with Scream 7, yeah, that character might be connected to Sam, but also, are we going to get, like, is there an orchestrator of why Richie and Amber did this? Is there somebody ahead of them or above them? Maybe. So I don't think Richie is anywhere near close to Billy. I don't know if you should build the trilogy kind of around him. I actually would have preferred Amber being the one you chose to kind of go more in depth with like a family thing. That's just me, though. But with that being said, Richie as Richie, I think is super likable. This one hurt because this one's also odd. It's so obvious that it's him, I think. I think it's very, very clear it's him and Amber. I think 5 is one of the easiest films to read who the killers are. Now, also, the trailer definitely didn't help. The trailer actually revealed that it was both of them before the movie even came out, right? So you're in the movie, I'm in the movie watching it, and you know it's Richie. But you actually kind of fall in love. Like, Jack Quaid does such a good job. He's got such a good personality and energy that you fall in love with the character. And when he says to Sam, like, you know, sucks that it's me, like, I know, I actually felt that. I was like, you're right. That is a phenomenal line. And coming from you with your energy level, it's like, yeah, it actually does suck that it's you, but it does make sense for the movie, right? That's the line. That's true. That's a very truthful line. And I think it actually hit because it's like, you know it's him, or at least you suspect him, right? And you don't want it to be him. Now, maybe you don't want it to be him because you don't want it to be the boyfriend. So copying Scream 1. And that could be a very fair criticism even, right? Maybe that's the reason. But I think on top of that, it's also, I would have liked to see this character live. I'd like to see this character kind of go on in future movies and finally be that boyfriend that, I guess, Mark Kincaid, but he doesn't come back after 3, right? So he is a protective, nice guy that, you know, marries Sydney, but you don't get that on screen. Richie would maybe be the first time that you actually see that. Now it's actually Danny. Now Danny is that character. So Richie, I think, as a person, polar opposite of Amber. He's on screen so much. He's in your face so much. You suspect him for sure, but he's always there, and he just has loads of personality. And I really like, I mean, their monologues, Amber and him going back and forth, kind of riffing off each other, I thought was phenomenal. Really good. Obviously, I think they were going for the Billy Stu kind of thing, but with a twist, and I do believe they nailed it. Number 5, I'm going with Roman. Now, I am almost positive he has moved dramatically up the list. I think he was probably down there with like a Charlie and Mickey when I first made this. I'm putting him at number 5, so he's definitely risen. Now, the thing with Roman that I'd like to say, he's going to get bonus points, I suppose, because everything... Now, of course, there's the theories that, you know, he didn't act alone, and there is plenty of actual evidence to probably suggest that there were 2, and for whatever reason, that was not decided to be the case when the film came out. So if we are literally assuming that every call, every kill was only him, number 1, it kind of is unbelievable because it really shouldn't work. But number 2, he deserves a lot of credit, right? Because there are some pretty okay phone calls in there, I'd say, maybe even towards the tail end. His call with Sydney, I think, is very, very good. And then all the deaths. Now, the deaths in Scream 3, I've never liked them. I don't think they're all that good, to be honest with you. So he doesn't get, like, massive points for the calls or the kills. But considering he's the one doing it and he's the only one doing it, you got to give him points. I will say I like the director version of him. I like the energy. He's a bit goofy. He's a bit kind of out there. And he's also a bit, like, kind of pushed away. Like, it is, in a sense, like a Debbie Salt thing because he's there, but he's there definitely more than she was. But he's also not there as much as other characters that you would probably suspect more, right? He maybe would not be at the top of your list when you're watching that film. And then I really love, so why is he so high? Well, I'll tell you why. Because his monologue with Sydney and that fight is spectacular. It's a 10 out of 10. It's one of the best, if not the best ending of any of the Scream movies. From the action to just his monologue going back and forth to Sydney, you know, screaming at him. They work so well. It works so well. So yes, it's like a 5-8 minute scene. Like, it's really not too big, all things considered, especially compared to other Ghostface killers, but he makes the most out of it. And so while it's maybe even like an Amber thing, he's not so strong beyond that, but it is just so good. And it's also so different. You know, Amber and Richie, again, kind of Billy Stu, it's kind of been done before, but with Roman, it's pretty unique, and they did it really well. Number 4, I'm going with Debbie Salt, Mrs. Loomis, you know, whatever you want to call her. She's incredible, okay? The thing with her is you just got to go for the surprise factor. I think she's just so well hidden. And, you know, you rewatch these movies over and over again. And, you know, some of them, again, I think are more readable. Like, you can kind of read who's the killers more than others. You know, Scream 1, I think it's incredibly obvious. Now, I wasn't watching it in 96. I don't, you know what I mean? Maybe the big twist was you think there's only going to be one and then there's two. I think that was kind of the goal of that film. And that's what kind of made it stand out. But, like, watching 2, it's like, when would you ever really suspect her? I guess she's there. Like, you know, she's always kind of around. She's there reporting at, like, Cece's house, right, or the frat house. Like, she beats people to places, and she's always kind of around. So, like, I guess you could probably figure it out, but it's just so well done. I think it's very well hidden. You know, I mentioned the Randy thing. You got to give her credit. You know what I mean? She killed Randy, number 1. And number 2, that phone call I thought was very, both of them. I think it was really carried by, I guess, Roger's voice. But again, if we're attributing it to somebody, and then, you know, Jamie Kennedy as Randy, they did such a good job. And then even the finale, I think the finale is very good. You know, the Mickey part is kind of cut short, and I like it, but I really think it's the Mrs. Loomis part. That part is really special. All these action-y things, right? Like the stage transforming and Sydney doing all this stuff. Higher budget, feels bigger, and she's a big part of that. She's why that stuff even kind of has to happen in the first place, right? And then also the motive, just simple revenge. And, you know, unlike Bailey and all of them, revenge had already been done. So for her, this was the first time. Simply, you killed my baby boy, and I'm coming after you. And that's literally it. I mean, there's nothing more to it, and that's great. Number 3, I'm going with Jill. I do believe Jill was high last time. Gotta keep her high again. She's phenomenal. I think I like her character more and more every time that I watch. It's maybe, again, an example of a character that's a little bit maybe not so well. I definitely think when Scream 4 came out, people had a lot of problems with Jill, like the non-unhinged character, right? The one that is almost kind of portrayed as like the next Sydney. And I mean, that's the thing. She really was designed on purpose to make that twist, to be the final girl, to be the Sydney Prescott, to be that person. And then she turns. And I mean, I would just like to say, okay, when Emma Roberts goes for it, and from the time that she stabs Sydney, pulls off the mask, and from that point on, it's just, it's not even a 10 out of 10. It's got to be higher than that, right? I love her. I think she's such a great lunatic. I guess Emma Roberts in that sense, right? But no, I mean, Jill is such a great character for those last 10, 15 minutes. But even beyond that, I mean, the cleverness of how they set her up, I got to give her credit. And I also think, I don't know, in my opinion, I don't hate her as much as maybe other people did at the time. She is a bit different, and she is lacking a little bit of like a personality, let's say. It's not too bad, though, in my opinion, at least. And I think any positive she has, you know, completely wipes out any negative immediately. So that just leaves the original 2, and it's going to keep the same order that I kept before. Stu is number 2, Billy is number 1. I guess at that point, you could flip a coin to determine, you know, who deserves it more. I mean, Stu, incredible. I've talked about him a lot, so I'll try to keep this part relatively short. Matthew Lillard, just, you know, I don't even know what to say, right? There's just so much energy. There's so much to Stu as a character. You know, in a way, maybe like actually too much, because like, again, I think it's so obvious it's him. I also think some of the biggest like telltale signs of like knowing who it is, I think Stu actually kind of has most of them. Him checking his hair, right, when he's going like this because he's got the bump on his head. And then also when he talks, when they're at the fountain the first time, right, you see the gang, he's basically defending himself. He's defending like the murder, and Billy's like, well, nobody said anything, like wink, wink, like shut up. And it's like, it's so obvious. And I think that's kind of just what you get, when you get Matthew Lillard. There's just going to be so much personality there. But, the ending, the monologue, now Billy carries it, but Stu jumps in and out, and I think they work so well together. Again, there's not much more to be said. But I will say this, actually. There's not too many killings in Scream 1. You don't see the Ghostface mask even all that much in Scream 1. A lot of what carries the killers of Scream 1 are the characters. You're with Billy and Stu a lot, way, way more than the Ghostface. Whereas you look at Amber, you could argue her in the outfit, she's actually in the outfit more than she's just a normal character. So and you have to kind of carry it differently. You have to kind of portray it differently. And obviously Stu did that. And then Billy, the original, I think he also has such great personality, very different, very dark. He always, like from the very first time I watched it, I didn't know any better. Is that Johnny Depp? So he always has reminded me, at least in looks, of Johnny Depp. I think his acting is phenomenal. If you want to attribute like the phone call, like you imagine the Casey Becker call in the beginning is him, and that kind of is where everything was born, right? With that kind of playing cat and mouse kind of thing. Roger talks about that, but again, technically you got to give that to Billy. So just so great. I mean, honestly, and Billy, I think because he's a little bit like Stu is one-dimensional in the sense that he's always like an 11 out of 10 energy-wise. Billy is a bit kind of all over the place. Billy's also, though, extremely like easy to identify that it's clearly him. Like there's just so many signs. So I guess that kind of does hurt him. But, again, the strengths vastly take out the weaknesses. So let me know your ranking in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. I got plenty more videos like this coming. I hope to see you guys there.